Hello. Today I will present our paper titled Islamically, I Am No Longer on My Period, a study of menstrual tracking in Muslim women in the US. This paper is co-authored by Zaidat Ibrahim, Pallavi Panchpor, Dr. Novia Nurain, and Dr. James Clawson at the Lodi School of Informatics, Computing and Engineering at Indiana University, Bloomington. Menstrual tracking applications have been adopted widely. It is estimated that globally, approximately 50 million individuals use apps to track their monthly menstrual cycle. Given the widespread adoption of menstrual tracking apps, there has been many research endeavors on menstruation and menstrual tracking. Notably, the 2017 SIGCHI paper by Epstein et al. Kicked off a dramatic uptick in research on menstrual tracking. However, in the intervening years, existing literature on HCI has yet to explore the impact of religious practices on menstrual tracking behavior. Building on noted gaps from previous research, we sought to expand the menstrual tracking literature to include perspectives from a faith-based population. This research positions itself at the intersection of research on women's health, HCI, and religion. Our work seeks to fill the underexplored gap of menstrual tracking within a faith-based group. In our work, we investigate the menstrual tracking practices of Muslim women of faith in the United States, a population whose personal reproductive health behaviors are deeply influenced by their faith, values, and religious laws. We explored how Muslim women engage with menstrual tracking apps and uncovered challenges with existing designs of menstrual tracking applications. To approach our research, we recruited participants using flyers, newsletters, and social media. We first conducted a preliminary survey. We received 133 responses to our survey distributions. This survey asked about methods for tracking menstrual cycle, the apps used in tracking, demographic information, and we also used it as a recruitment vehicle for semi-structured interviews. Next, we conducted semi-structured interviews with 20 participants to gain deeper insights into tracking behaviors, their needs, and religious influence on tracking practices. At the time of completing our semi-structured interviews, the US Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, removing federal protection for abortion rights. Therefore, 9 months after the overturn of Roe v. Wade, we conducted a post-Roe v. Wade survey to collect perceptions on how the widely publicized case impacted menstruating Muslims' views on menstrual tracking. In this survey, we asked about the use or discontinuous use of menstrual tracking applications as a result of Roe v. Wade, and we also probed their perspectives on concerns about the Supreme Court decision. We received 77 responses to our post-Roe v. Wade survey. For our data analysis, we adopted a mixed method approach, analyzing our data both qualitatively and quantitatively. Our findings cut across three core themes. First, menstrual tracking and adhering to religious guidelines. Second, tensions around values and menstrual tracking applications. And finally, implications of how the overturn of Roe v. Wade impacted Muslim women's use of menstrual tracking applications. Now to finding number one on menstrual tracking and adhering to religious guidelines. Similar to prior research, our population mirrored many of the typical motivations for tracking periods, such as tracking for fertility and tracking to inform conversations with healthcare providers. However, we also uncovered motivations for tracking that were specific to our population. Muslim women typically track their cycle in order to adhere to religious guidelines. One guideline that menstruating individuals are required to abstain from the act of praying and fasting. Therefore, individuals track to plan other ways of maintaining spiritual connection during their menstrual cycle. As a result of abstinence from praying and fasting during menstruation, some participants indicated preference for social activities during their menstrual cycle, especially when these activities are with their non-Muslim friends. This preference is driven by the fact that they are not needing to pray, therefore these social activities would not interfere with their prayer obligations. For individuals looking to travel for religious pilgrimage, they are motivated to track their menstrual cycle in order to plan their pilgrimage in a manner that doesn't intersect with menstruation, as menstruating individuals are exempted from certain practices during a religious pilgrimage. For married participants, tracking becomes relevant to help them and their partners prepare for the guidelines that prohibit sexual intercourse during menstruation. And finally, for participants with longer than the typical duration of menstrual cycle, they track to help distinguish and define the Islamic definition of period duration, at which point exemptions from prayers and fastings no longer holds. I will showcase an example for the last point, where participants track particularly to adhere to the Islamic definition for the duration of menstruation. When menstruating or bleeding exceeds the number of days as defined by religious laws, menstruating individuals would need to recommence the mandatory prayers and fasting, regardless of their physical bleeding. Participant 10 particularly tracks for this reason. In her statement, she said the following: I follow the belief that your period can only last 10 days. And if it lasts longer, it's irregular and not defined as a period longer than 10 days. For example, if during the month of Ramadan, I have a period where I'm physically bleeding for 11 days, I would still fast on the final 11th day, because Islamically, I am no longer on my period. I have very long periods. That was my reason for starting to track. Now to finding number 2 on tensions around values and menstrual tracking applications. Participants expressed several tensions with existing menstrual tracking apps. First, a clash in modesty values based on open discussions about sex and sexual partners on online forums with complete strangers. Secondly, a gap in knowledge, especially on menstruation, from both Islamic point of view and from health perspective. An example of the first tension on clash in modesty is highlighted by participant 7, where she highlighted that I used to go to the questions part of the menstrual app. Some of the questions and consigns are very provocative. It's not for Muslim women. Some things that the ladies discussed, I wouldn't feel that they're appropriate to be discussed on such a platform. Of course, for the modesty that we have as Muslim women, it feels like it is a violation of privacy. I don't like the discussions on the app. Now to finding number 3 on the implications of how Roe v. Wade overturn impacted the use of menstrual tracking applications. From our Roe v. Wade survey, we received 77 respondents to the survey. Of the 77 respondents, 67 reported that they currently use menstrual tracking applications to track their menstrual cycle. And 54 reported that their decision to use menstrual tracking technology had not changed in a Roe v. Wade world. Respondent 48, who continues to use menstrual tracking apps, said the following: everyone should be able to decide what they do to their bodies. Islam has guidelines and even allows it referring to abortion in certain circumstances, so I am pro-choice. For respondent 18, who discontinued the use of menstrual tracking app for tracking her cycle, the overturning of the abortion protection brought to her attention that period app companies might have to turn your data over to local governments or individuals who suspect a person of having an abortion. That your period data could be used against you was the big outcry around the time we conducted our post-Roe v. Wade survey. Respondent 18 reported that I am concerned about reproductive issues. I feel bodily autonomy is significant. I'm a bit scared to use apps now because companies can track and sell your data. With that, it wraps up our overall findings. Now to our discussion. Our discussion focused on 2 key conversations. 1, a call to action for HCI researchers, and 2, design recommendations and considerations. For our call to action, we amplified the call for considering nuanced aspects of individuals' lives, such as religious identity and cultural norms, in the design of personal health tracking technologies. First call to action is rethinking our design beyond dominant representations by considering the religious aspects of individuals' lives and exploring how adherents of faith practices interact with technology for health. Secondly, designers could consider a pluralist approach in designs to embrace diversity of needs, perspectives, and user groups in the active artifacts that we create. We also offer design recommendations. First, we recommend designing for faith-inspired value for modesty, And secondly, we recommend considering designing for data privacy and protection, particularly in light of the reproductive laws. And then finally, designing for educational support to support and help individuals navigate the nuances in menstrual lived experience from a health and from a religious perspective. Please check out our follow-up study, which is also presented at CHI 2024, titled Tracking During Ramadan, Examining the Intersection of Menstrual and Religious Tracking Practices Among Muslim Women in the United States. And finally, I want to remind you of our key takeaways. We are advancing a call to action for our fellow HCI researchers and designers to take any and all steps you can to help eliminate ordering, considering diverse perspectives, and promote the design of equitable health tracking technologies. To that end, we present a variety of opportunities for designers to engage with in order to create more inclusive menstrual tracking technologies in the future. Thank you so much. Please feel free to connect with us, email us, and connect with me. Thank you.